Hey everybody, JJ here, bull to the bust. It is Sunday, March 15th. Thank you for joining in here. Oh, so much to talk about. The Fed, another rate cut. This is a slash to near 0% rates. We knew this was coming. It is interesting though that they didn't wait till the actual meeting, which was the 17th, so they couldn't even wait 2 days. That does tell you the level of a panic that they're having up there. Also, we're going to talk more about this whole economic system right now and the lockdown that's taking place, the panic that's spreading across the globe, including here in the United States, and how it is a possibly a smoke screen for the financial crisis. Companies asking the White House to suspend tariffs. We're going to talk about just the interesting timing in that. Military deployment to fight illness. It's happening in some parts of the country or some parts of the world, some countries. Could happen here in the U.S. We're going to talk about that. Working class bailout. Is it going to happen? There's more calls for it. Wild stock market swings. And finally, prepare for shocking events. So let's get into it. Let's get it started right here. The Fed cuts rates to zero, launches massive $700 billion quantitative easing program. Right, so we all knew that the QE was going to come back, that the programs were going to be re-implemented, only this time to a much bigger scale. Now think about it, if we didn't have this illness, panic spreading across the globe, what would their excuse be, right? So they had to have an excuse, and no, I'm not saying that anyone started this on purpose. I'm just saying look at the timing, and you probably heard the phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, now, in my opinion, this is the screen or the smoke screen or the cover for all the emergency actions that are going to be implemented now. The cutting of the interest rates. We told you we were likely going to zero, and it's my opinion that we'll probably see negative here in the very near future. More quantitative easing. If they didn't have this scare that's happening right now globally, everyone would be pointing at the financial system and the people behind the financial system, the string pullers, the market makers, and they would be saying, hey, what's going on? Didn't you learn anything from 2008? This is much worse than 2008. We're having to cut rates lower. We've had to continuously liquefy the banks and now more massive QE. All of this is going to make 2008 pale in comparison. We haven't seen anything yet. Get ready, and we're going to talk more about preparedness and getting ready here later on in this video. The Fed has slashed the rate of emergency lending at the discount window for banks by 125 basis points down to 0.25%. And they've also lengthened the term of the loans now to 90 days. Right? So what does that tell you? The banks, if they were paying these back, and we still can't prove that they are paying them back, but why are they extending them now to 90 days? The banks are in big, big trouble. And of course they wouldn't want to admit that, because then they'd have to admit the massive failures that we've seen for the people running this financial system and for the politicians in charge, of course. So again, the smokescreen. The new Fed funds rate used as the benchmark both for short-term lending and for financial institutions as a peg for many consumer rates will now be targeted at 0 to 0.25%. Now, of course, the credit cards, they're still going to keep those rates jacked up. They're not going to cut those rates to even close to zero. We're lucky to see any drop at all in the credit card rates. All right, remember, the financial institutions, they get the low rates in the bailouts. Consumers, you and me, the working class, will get lower rates. We'll get lower mortgage rates. I'm not taking out a mortgage anytime soon, but for those of you who are, you'll get lower mortgage rates, lower borrowing rates on loans. But credit cards, don't expect the rates to go down much at all, if any. And the working class bailouts, could that be next? Well, there's talk about it. We're going to get into that here in a minute as well. All right, next up, companies ask White House to suspend tariffs. Now, how interesting is the timing on this? So over the past couple years, we have seen tariffs implemented that were unprecedented. And now here we are just a couple years later after the whole tariff and a trade war began, and now we have the companies that have, many of them have outsourced over to China, are asking for tariffs to be suspended. Well, isn't that convenient? Because of the whole fear and panic spreading across the globe from this outbreak, causing financial hardships, now they need to suspend tariffs because supply shortages. More people panicking, taking things off the shelves at the stores, bleach, toilet paper, hand wipes, sanitizer. And now the corporations are saying, hey, can you light up on those tariffs a little bit? Because these people, they're buying a lot of stuff and we can't keep the stores stocked. Right, so again, I mean, just the timing is so convenient for all of this. And again, I'm not saying anything was done as a setup, but I think it's being used in a very well thought out manner. They're using it strategically, to say the least. What's next? Military deployment to fight illness. We're going to talk about that. Just panic spreading across the globe. Ohio, for example, has closed all bars and restaurants. Sports leagues shutting down. Amazon is running out of stock on certain household items, and deliveries are going to be delayed due to the panic and the emergency buying. We have border controls to fight this outbreak over in France, for example, also Germany and some other countries. Casinos are closing down, stores are closing down. For example, casinos in Maryland are closing, and the ones that aren't closing are seeing a drastic drop-off in business because people were afraid to touch buttons and, of course, all those machines there. Vegas is going to take a big hit, and imagine all the workers that work at all of these locations that are shutting down. The working class is going to need a bailout, and we're going to talk about more of Andrew Yang type of ideas here in a few minutes. Also, payments are going to be suspended for certain forms of debt. For example, Apple is allowing customers to skip their March card payment. As you probably know, Apple has their own credit card. So now in order to help people that are unable to make their March payment, amidst all this chaos, they're going to suspend the payment for 1 month. We'll have to see if it extends it to more. This could likely roll out to other credit card companies as the working class feels the pinch of all these shutdowns and slashed working hours because of the closing, because of the scare. Right? White House, Larry Kudlow's out there saying that the federal government may have to give these emergency loans to the airlines. We talked about that. We know that massive bailouts are ahead for the airline, other travel industry sectors. They're probably going to have to buy a new fleet of helicopters for all the helicopter money that needs to be dropped on this. Right? Also, even with all the talk of the stimulus bailouts and the slashing of rates to near zero, stock futures are plummeting. Stock futures are plummeting. Also, top New York City official calls for the city to be shut down. So the U.S., we're looking at possibility of shutdowns, lock-ins. There's also not only quarantines, but curfews are being implemented in certain areas. And here is one of the biggest things that we should be looking into here: the military deployment to fight illness. Now, it is happening in some other countries right now. There's checkpoints set up. Some of them are actually taking people's temperature, which is crazy because there's things you can take to make your temperature go down, fever medicine. So I guess they're just going to identify the people that haven't taken fever medicine, even if they are sick, because a lot of these checkpoints are just taking people's temperature. Some of them are also doing swabs in the mouth. We are talking about a global police state here in 2020 that could happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's already started in some countries, and we'll just have to see how this panic continues to spread. All right, but here's what's so interesting about this possible military deployment here in the U.S. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is calling for the president to mobilize federal troops and localize testing to help fight the illness outbreak. And he said the following recently, quote, "Every country affected by this crisis has handled it on a national basis. The United States has not." He continues, "State and local governments alone simply do not have the capacity or resources to do what is necessary, and we don't want a patchwork quilt of policies," unquote. So basically, Cuomo, he has urged the administration to allow states to certify a wide range of testing labs, as well as to federalize shutdowns across the country. He's also pointed to the, quote, "imminent failure of hospital systems as cases mount." Right, so that alone is pretty shocking just by itself, to think about a police state here in the U.S. with military checkpoints, testing, troops putting swabs in your mouth as you try to go pick up supplies from the store, depending on where the checkpoints are going to be located at. But even more interesting than that to me is the timing, because there were other operations that the military was going to be needed here. They were going to be needed for here domestically in the United States. Not related to this recent scare that's spreading across the globe. What are those other operations? We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Let's talk about the working class bailout. We know it's usually the working class that gets hurt the most. The people, they can't pay their rent, they have to move in with relatives, people losing their homes, when they miss just a paycheck or a couple paychecks, because so many people living paycheck to paycheck. So again, we'll have to see how it unfolds. They're going to have to suspend foreclosures. And we already talked about in a previous video how they're putting a moratorium on landlords that are not getting their rent, so they're going to be limiting the landlord's ability in some areas to kick people out when they don't pay the rent, to evict them. And what's going to be done with the landlords we'll have to see, but they may have to put a moratorium on all the foreclosures, which again is going to come back to the banks. It's going to require bigger and bigger bailouts to the banks, because if they can't foreclose when the homeowners are not making their payments, that's going to be more stress to the banking system and bigger bailouts needed. Let's talk about this. This is out of Newsweek. Andrew Yang warns that this fallout could be, quote, worse than the 2008 financial crisis as support grows for universal basic income. So basically he's out there taking credit for this idea of UBI, especially now that we're going to see the middle class and the working class under so much pressure. And we've reported on it here before that the administration is considering not only tax cuts or suspension of tax collection, but also UBI type payouts to Americans. And I think people now are really starting to realize how ill prepared that they are. I remember going to a couple parties and meetups over the past couple years, school events and things like that, talking to other people. And of course, I get into financial stuff and economics and preparation, and a lot of people, did act like I was a little bit crazy for preparing and storing away food items and water, and having a water filter, like a Berkey filter, stuff like that. Speaking of Berkey filters, they are basically only one version of that Berkey filter is available right now at both directly from Berkey and also at Amazon. So I apologize to the people that I posted a link a few videos ago to get the Berkey, and some of those links may take you to something that's out of stock. So I think there is still one left in stock. I'll put a link down there. It's a link over to the homepage. It does help out the channel a little bit if you use that link, but I can't guarantee that they're in stock, but I will put it down there just in case that one particular model may still be in stock. All right, and back to the topic of what we talked about here earlier, these military deployments will prepare for shocking events. All I can say is that the military was going to be needed here anyways, because of this failed financial system and some other things that are just they're basically going to shock the world. So get prepared. The other events I can't really go into too much detail, but there's going to be some just shocking events happening here in 2020. Everybody get prepared. I hope you're ready, and try to be as self-sufficient as possible. Get food. First of all, water. You can only go a few days without water. Get food. Even if you think that this whole panic is going to subside, or even if you think this whole outbreak is going to start getting better as the weather gets warmer, you cannot underestimate people when they panic. Right? So empty store shelves is because of people panicking, and sometimes buying things that they don't need, right? How much toilet paper are you going to need if you run out of food, right? The answer is 0 if you completely run out of food, right? After a while, you're going to see people trying to trade all of their toilet paper for some canned food, Supply chains breaking, fear, shortages, financial collapse, bailouts, crisis. It's all happening, and again, mind-blowing things are going to happen throughout this year. Stay prepared. If for some reason this platform goes away, just search for Bull Boom Bear Bust. I am available on some different platforms. Just do the search in there in your search engine of choice, and if for whatever reason YouTube gets shut down, maybe they'll close their doors because of this whole scare that's going on. Maybe it'll go dark, and hopefully other websites that I'm up on will not go dark, but if that does happen, try to find me, just type it in, and I'll still be putting out stuff even if this platform sees a shutdown. Either way, thank you for being here, for listening. Hope you're prepared. I appreciate all your support, and I wish you well. Prepare for the bear, and it's going to be a big bear.